Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris, and this is the astrology for the week ahead. I am talking about November 4th through November 10th. And this week, we are really just talking about something that we have been talking about quite a bit, and this is Mars opposite Pluto. We are coming fresh into the energy of this intensity as we enter this week. Mars and Pluto had their exact opposition on the 3rd. And again, this is just coming days after our Scorpio New Moon, which was on November 1st. So we really start this week out coming out of what could feel like some tension, quite a bit of tension. And we're moving through that this week, okay? And then when we get to the 10th, we are really starting actually to emerge out of that tension from the Mars opposite Pluto, just in time to move into the energy that is going to pull us into our Taurus full moon happening on the 15th. Okay, so, but that is, really the focus of this week is allowing ourselves to move through what we are moving through. A lot of people are finding this time very challenging. And, this is part of, yes, the opposition between Mars and Pluto, but specifically because of everything else that's happening in November and what this particular conversation is speaking to, which is the fact that on the 19th, we're going to have Pluto enter Aquarius. And then just 4 days before that, when we have that Taurus full moon, we also have Saturn station direct. So those are two important energies that are coming later in the month, but they are coming out of this tension that we're having between Mars and Pluto, and they're both also squaring Juno, who is now at the beginning degrees of Scorpio. So really, as we move through this week, and of course now Mars is in Leo. Okay, so we have Mars in Leo through November. Mars is going to move up towards 6 degrees of Leo, and then it's going to station retrograde. But Mars in Leo, this itself is very different energy than Mars in Cancer. Mars in Leo is wanting, after we've kind of had a journey of redirecting and learning about our own drive in terms of those very Cancerian places of emotion and feeling and care and hopefully nurture, then it's kind of like we open up to all of that feeling. And then as we open up to all of that feeling, oh my gosh, we can come into this place of heart-centered connection. And that's what Leo wants to be about. And so Mars in Leo, especially when it's moving from a wakeful place, is about having this kind of energy in our life that wants to move from a heart-centered place. And yet we come into that with Pluto opposite that. Okay, and so that can be a bit of a drain of energy. Okay, in that heart-centered place, especially because this is a Pluto finishing its journey through Capricorn. There could be grief coming up this week. There could be push and pulls. Now we want to sit with the astrology, which is asking for us to really honor our own reflective process of what we are releasing. And I think it is really important to name this week and next week, but especially this week because we're in between that Scorpio new moon and the Taurus full moon that's coming. We are with the ending of Pluto and Capricorn, and this absolutely is it is a death cycle. There is a lot ending. This is happening on various levels, some of which we can really reflect on our life and see how we are letting go of stages of our life, and bigger levels that we can't totally comprehend. And as this is happening, Mars is there. And so there's this evolutionary energy, and it can and probably is intense in different ways. This is going to completely depend upon our natal chart, how it's impacting us, what it's singing to us about, what wants to be understood and felt. This is coming out of that Scorpio new moon, which can be very deep and could have had us really, having some depths of our own experiences come up. And of course, Juno is at those beginning stages of Scorpio, and she is squaring that Mars and that Pluto. And so, but she's also a reminder. She's a reminder that we want to come in to potentially, it's almost like as there is this deep, deep ending, it can also bring up a new intimacy with ourselves. And that intimacy can only happen because there is this deep, deep ending. And so just taking a lot of care this week, because if you are feeling drained, if stuff is coming up, it's totally normal. It's totally normal. Not to mention there's a little bit of stuff going on in the world right now. Could be a bit distracting. So, taking care and trying to feed a little bit of that Leo joy that does want to be fed, right? And, here really reflecting on what is possible. What is possible for you in the future? Not in a way that we're bypassing what is coming up, because there might be stuff coming up. And if it is coming up, it wants to be seen. It wants to be witnessed. It wants to be released. And this is a stage, and this is what that kind of Scorpio New Moon really opened us to. It's that it wants to be witnessed so that it can be released. It doesn't want us to dig in and do all of this kind of shadow work of, it just wants to be witnessed and released, because that's what's happening right now. There is a release. This is the end of an era. And this is a death of the Pluto in Capricorn stage. And Pluto will not be in Capricorn for over 200 years. So there is, we are moving through it this week. Okay, and so just allowing that to be, and also what is possible for yourself as a creative being. That's possible now and or becoming possible. You might only just be imagining it. You don't need to be fully living it. That wasn't possible 16 years ago. Okay, that's one of the reflections that we can really move through this week, while there is this tight conversation still going between Mars and Pluto, while that Mars is now at these beginning stages of Leo. And we don't need to like fully have it figured out, because Mars is going to go retrograde, which says you can't have it fully figured out and there's something to be reworked there. But it's really coming. The full understanding of Mars and Leo comes 2025, after Mars has gone back through Cancer, because there's things there that need to be reworked in order for us to fully understand this cycle of Mars through Leo. So I've been saying this in like every single video, but we are in process, okay? Also, it is important to note that as we move into next week, on the 15th, when we have that full moon, Saturn's going to station direct. So Saturn's going real slow. It moves about 4 minutes this week. And then at the end of the week, we're going to be at that exact place at 12 degrees of Pisces, where Saturn will station direct. So Saturn is slowing down. Saturn is slowing down as Pluto is finishing its journey in Capricorn. And Saturn is our ruler of Capricorn. So there's a lot of connections going on between kind of Saturn and Pluto throughout this month, in the way that it's working with the new moon we just had and the full moon. But there is this alignment, right? And that word alignment is a Saturn word, structures. And so it's also important to acknowledge, especially as we move through this last week of Pluto and Capricorn, last 2 weeks, what structures and alignments do you have within yourself in connection to your spirituality, in connection to your deep values and your belief systems, in connection to ultimately elder wisdom and natural orders, because that is Capricorn's sacred territory. And we can really reflect on that. And that is what we are bringing in to Pluto moving through Aquarius, so that we have some of those internal structures in our own kind of understanding of how we want to align to the world, to society, to our spirituality, to nature. that we find that within ourselves and connect it, because we're going to need that within ourselves as we move into Pluto and Aquarius, because Aquarius builds off of those Capricornian structures. And there is something within ourselves in our new alignments that we can really reflect on. And maybe some of the grief, if you are moving through grief this week, and again, that can be at the intersections, of course, of our own lives and what's going on in the collective. That said, this is about our own journey, right? And so we are talking about an ending of a cycle that started in 2008. And so what alignments do you have, and how might some of the grief that's coming up, is there a space for reflection that you are able to move in a way that you couldn't move before? Because it wasn't time. Now it's time. Now it's time to understand that we can go about our lives in a different way. And that different way is going to be the next 20 years of Pluto moving through Aquarius. So we're in a bit of an in-between week. There's a bit of tension for sure between that Mars and that Pluto. And again, it's about being with ourselves, honoring ourselves, deep intimacy with ourselves, rather than reacting to others with this energy. And also, as we approach kind of around the 7th to the end of this week, we are going to have Mercury, who's moving through Sagittarius, enter its pre-retrograde shadow, because of course Mercury is going to go retrograde at the end of this month. And so just knowing that energy is coming too. So, we're getting Saturn, who next week is going to station direct. We have Pluto changing signs, and we have Mercury entering its pre-shadow retrograde. And especially with that Mercury being in Sagittarius, okay, and then that Mercury later in the month is also going to be talking to Jupiter in Gemini. This is really kind of, it's like flashing lights from the cosmos that we don't have to have everything understood. We don't need to understand everything. We are in process, and we're going to get some insight. We're going to get some possibly really lovely reflections emerging as we move through the rest of this year and then into the beginning of 2025. I can't even believe I'm talking about the beginning of 2025. I'm always like, how do we get here? And that's our week. Okay, so lots of love as we move through these tender times, and there could be lots coming up, and moving with it. And I'm sending out blessings. Be well.